Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. In a world where everyone has access to the exact same true numbers, how is it possible that two brilliant people can sit face to face for an hour and a half, never utter a single false statistic, and still completely fail to agree on basic reality?
Yeah, I mean, that is really the defining question of our time.
It really is.
Because for decades, the assumption was always that, more data would just automatically lead to more consensus.
Right. Give people the facts and they'll naturally converge on the truth.
Exactly. But we are seeing the exact opposite happen in real time. It's like more data simply provides more ammunition for entirely separate realities.
And today we are unpacking an encounter that perfectly captures this structural collapse of shared reality. We're looking at a 90-minute interview between Zanny Minton Beddoes, the editor-in-chief of The Economist, and Elon Musk.
It's a fascinating exchange.
And we are anchoring our discussion in the article titled, Economist Zanny Minton Beddoes is bemused by Elon Musk's post-interview jabs, alongside some incredibly sharp supplementary analysis from commentator Lao Fan.
We really need to set the stakes right at the top here, because it's super tempting to look at this and just see, a petty social media squabble between a journalist and a tech billionaire.
Oh, totally. Just another Twitter, expat.
Right. But if you peer under the hood, this conversation is an absolute masterclass in modern polarization. Our goal today is to look past those post-interview insults to really understand the architectural differences in how traditional media and tech titans construct truth in the AI era.
And just to be completely clear to you listening at home, our goal today is not to declare a winner. We aren't endorsing either Musk's or Beddoes' political viewpoints.
Definitely not.
We are putting this debate under a microscope purely to see how modern arguments are actually constructed.
Okay, let's unpack this. We should probably start with the setup, because the origins of this clash were actually surprisingly cordial. Yeah, they really were.
Beddoes and Musk basically ran into each other at a California event. She pitched the interview, and Musk just agreed via a direct message on X. He literally sealed it with a thumbs-up emoji.
Which is very on brand for him.
Totally, and they ultimately filmed it on Musk's home turf. So they're at the Tesla Gigafactory in Texas, and you've got these massive robot arms working on the production line right behind them.
And the visual framing of that alone is just striking. You have the editor-in-chief of a 180-year-old, highly buttoned-up British institution sitting on the factory floor of the future.
It's quite the contrast.
It really is. And the crazy thing is, for the first 55 minutes, they actually get along exceptionally well.
They do. They are engaged in this highly civil, really expansive discussion about the future of humanity.
Yeah, they cover some really fascinating ground early on. Musk speaks very optimistically about this impending age of abundance, and they dive deep into artificial intelligence.
Beddoes even brings up a comment Musk made back in 2015. He had suggested that artificial superintelligence might end up keeping humans as pet Labradors.
I remember that quote.
Yeah, and she contrasts that with his 2023 warnings about a 10 to 20% chance of killer robots wiping out humanity. It's a genuine, really intellectual exchange about the trajectory of our species.
But then the pivot happens.
Right.
The conversation shifts away from interstellar travel and technology, and it turns toward Musk's current political involvement. Specifically, his role in the proposed Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE.
And his rather grim views on the state of Europe.
Exactly. And that is the exact moment the tracks diverge. We never get back on the same page after that.
The aftermath is what made all the headlines, though. Musk goes onto his platform X, and he calls Beddoes an unthinking NPC.
Which, for anyone who doesn't play video games, is gamer slang for a non-player character.
Right, essentially accusing her of having no internal monologue and just, repeating programmed establishment lines. He also labels her a traitor to the West.
And Beddoes, for her part, was genuinely bemused by the whole thing. She actually had to look up what an NPC was.
I love that detail.
What's fascinating here is that little detail, having to look up what an NPC is, it highlights the cultural chasm between them so perfectly.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Beddoes explicitly states that she is not a Musk hater. She actually deeply respects his world building, his engineering achievements, his entire record of confounding critics who bet against him.
But she finds his behavior on X genuinely disturbing.
Yes. She notes this bizarre contradiction. Musk claims AI needs to be strictly truth-seeking, right? Yet the content he propagates to his 240 million followers is often pure caricature and dystopia.
I want to push back on something, though. If Musk is this expansive spacefaring visionary who builds rockets based on strict physics, Why resort to juvenile tribal insults like NPC?
It's a great question.
I mean, it feels like watching two people play a board game, but one is playing chess and the other is playing Monopoly. They're fundamentally not playing by the same rules.
It's even deeper than playing different games, actually. They are operating in entirely different realities of validation. Beddoes fears that 240 million follower echo chamber because, for many in that audience, Musk can literally do no wrong.
Right. Their entire worldview is shaped by his algorithm.
Exactly. But to understand how this plays out in real time, we really have to look at the actual mechanics of their arguments during that final half hour.
And this is where Lao Fan's analysis becomes so crucial. Let's look at what Lao Fan calls the battle of the numbers, because both Musk and Beddoes were using factually real statistics.
Neither of them lied.
Right. Yet they disagreed fiercely. So the first major clash was over those DOGE aid cuts. Beddoes suggests that abruptly shutting down thousands of aid programs causes unnecessary human suffering.
And Musk responds to that by claiming 0 people died because of DOGE.
But Beddoes counters that claim using a projection based on a Lancet Medical Journal study, and that study points to 14 million deaths.
That's a massive gap.
Let's pause on that, because you listening at home might be wondering how we jump from 0 to 14 million. Isn't one approach fundamentally more rigorous? I mean, modeling 13 million deaths takes peer-reviewed science, right?
You think so?
Yeah, demanding a strict body count for a defunded aid clinic feels like a rhetorical trick, not a valid alternative view.
In Beddoes' institutional arena, you are entirely correct. It looks exactly like a trick. But Lao Fan points out the brilliance of what is actually happening here. Neither side is fabricating numbers. They are just using completely different epistemological rulers.
Okay, epistemological ruler is a hefty term. For the audience, epistemology is just the philosophy of how we know what we know, right? Like, it's the standard we use to decide what counts as a fact.
Precisely. So Musk claims 0 because he's demanding a strict, counted metric. He wants to see actual death certificate.
And he is technically correct that no doctor in the world ever writes, died of a government aid cutoff on a death certificate.
Exactly. While the 14 million figure Beddoes brings to the table is a modeled metric.
Let's break down how that modeling actually works, because it's super important to understand this methodology. Researchers don't just guess, right?
No, not at all.
They establish a baseline of how many people usually survive in a specific region. Then they look at the cessation of funding, say, a clinic closing or malaria nets no longer being distributed.
Right, the real-world impact.
Yeah, and they calculate how many people should have survived based on historical trends, subtract the actual number of survivors, and those missing people are the excess mortality.
And it's worth noting that 14 million is just the midpoint of a massive statistical range. It actually spans from 8.5 million to 19.7 million.
That's a huge margin of error.
It carries that margin of error by design because it is an academic attempt to make invisible deaths visible. So, for the aid cuts, Musk demands counted, individual deaths, while Beddoes relies on modeled, systemic deaths.
But choosing your mathematical reality is one thing. Staying consistent with it is another. And this is where they execute a brilliant, almost imperceptible swap when the topic changes to Europe.
This part is wild.
They get into this debate comparing heat waves to gun violence. Beddoes points out that America's murder rate is staggering because of the proliferation of firearms.
And Musk counters with a very specific statistic. He claims that more people die of heat in Europe, 62,775 to be exact, than die of guns in America, which he states is 44,447.
Right.
He essentially challenges her, asking why The Economist isn't dedicating its covers to the lack of European air conditioning.
And here's the structural flip. To get that 62,775 number for European heat deaths, you have to use a modeled metric.
Oh, absolutely.
It is the exact same excess mortality methodology Beddoes just used for the aid cuts. Because, again, no one's death certificate says hot weather.
Yeah.
It says cardiac arrest or stroke or kidney failure exacerbated by dehydration.
So for this specific argument, Musk suddenly abandons his demand for counted death certificates and relies entirely on modeled data.
Exactly.
While simultaneously, for the American side of the equation, the 44,447 U.S. gun deaths he cites is a hard-counted metric pulled straight from the CDC.
And we really should note, that CDC number includes over 27,000 suicides.
Wow.
Yeah, which makes up about 62% of the total. Beddoes was specifically trying to discuss the interpersonal murder rate, but Musk threw the total counted aggregate on the table to make his comparison work.
And this is the exact reason neither could persuade the other. It is a stark warning for all of us consuming media today. The modern problem isn't that people are just fabricating data out of thin air.
Not anymore.
The problem is that the real world is so impossibly large and data collection is so vast that whatever truth you want to construct, you can find a legitimate peer-reviewed data set to support it. You just have to choose the right ruler.
But choosing a mathematical ruler for global health data is one thing. What happens when that exact same tactic is applied to something entirely subjective, like, culture, safety, or art?
Right, they go down this path too.
Yeah, Musk claims the United Kingdom is falling apart, basically teetering on the edge of civil war. Beddoes asks him when he was last in the UK, and he has to admit it was a few years ago.
And she lives in London, so she calls his view cloistered, which is a remarkably polite but sharp rebuke.
Very British.
Very. And she brings the receipts, pointing out that London's homicide rate is remarkably low. It's just 1.1 per 100,000 people.
Which is tiny.
Yeah, if you compare that to an American city like Washington, D.C., which sits at 27.5, she basically destroys his argument on paper.
On the police ledger, yes. But does the police ledger actually capture reality? I mean, if you live in London and you're listening to this right now, you might feel perfectly safe walking down your street, which supports Beddoes' point.
Right.
But if your neighbor's bike was just stolen or you've been harassed on the tube recently, you're going to resonate with Musk's point, regardless of what a bureaucratic spreadsheet says.
That is the crucial distinction.
Yeah.
The UK's Office for National Statistics actually publishes two entirely different crime series.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, one is police records, which shows crime falling. The other is a household survey, which tracks crime as it is actually experienced and reported by residents. And that household survey showed experienced crime rising by about 10%.
So they are looking at two completely conflicting ledgers from the exact same country. Psychologically, humans prioritize lived emotional experience over abstract statistics.
Of course they do.
If you feel unsafe and the household survey validates that feeling, you really aren't going to care that the police say homicides are down.
No, and we see this exact dynamic, the institutional ruling versus the public feeling, play out perfectly in their debate over a 2026 Canadian action film.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This part of the interview is wild. So a German ratings body effectively bans a vigilante movie from cinemas.
Yes.
Their institutional argument is that it glorifies lynch mob violence and paints Europe as this dystopian wasteland. So what does Musk do? He immediately steps in, uploads the full movie to X, and streams it for free for 48 hours.
He is explicitly invoking the Streisand effect there.
Which is when trying to hide something just draws more attention to it.
Right, exactly. By trying to censor it, the German authorities gave Musk the perfect opportunity to amplify it. He is telling his massive audience, the more the elites try to ban this, the more you should watch it.
And the ratings gap on this movie is just hilarious and telling. Institutional critics gave the film a 6% score. General audiences gave it a 94%.
A massive divide.
Beddoes, who's basically representing the institutional critic here, watched it and argued from a position of morality and taste. She said it was bad film, it was irresponsible of Musk to post it, and essentially it is harmful for society to consume.
And Musk's entire rebuttal was just 9 words. He just said, I think it's just a movie, worth watching.
In a courtroom, you argue the law. On the street, you argue taste. Beddoes is trying to hold court, but Musk owns the street.
That's a great way to put it.
But tell me, doesn't Beddoes have a valid point about glorifying violence? Why does Musk's refusal to engage with her moral framework work so effectively for his audience?
It works because he is delegitimizing her arena entirely. By saying, it's just a movie, he dismantles her moral framework by refusing to acknowledge that she even has the authority to dictate taste in the first place.
Ah, I see.
And this leads us directly into why their foundations for authority are hopelessly incompatible. We really have to look at the scale of their respective arenas.
Let's talk scale then. The Economist currently has 1.25 million paying subscribers. Now, in the publishing world, that is an incredible achievement. It is actually the highest circulation in their 180-year history.
It's massive for print.
But Elon Musk has roughly 240 million followers on X. That is a gap of nearly 192 times.
Right. And during the interview, they both accuse each other of living in a bubble. And the uncomfortable truth is they are both absolutely correct.
They really are.
Think about Beddoes' world. She has passed through elite institutional gates. Oxford, Harvard, the IMF, and now The Economist. In her arena, authority comes from strict accountability.
Your professional neck is on the line.
Exactly. You sign your name, you issue public corrections, and you could literally be fired or sued if you get the facts wrong.
And her subscribers aren't just a broad, anonymous audience either. They are policymakers, CEOs, and the people who actually manage global systems.
Right.
So what is Musk's bubble?
Well, Musk's authority comes purely from scale, algorithmic reach, and raw influence. He doesn't issue formal corrections when he tweets something misleading.
Not at all.
In his value system, influence is itself the ultimate legitimacy. If 240 million people are listening to him, reading his posts, and validating his ideas with millions of likes, then he is right by the sheer definition of the crowd.
Which perfectly explains their argument about media trust. Musk looks Beddoes in the eye and tells her that journalists have a 15% favorability rating, basically claiming the public universally loathes the mainstream media.
Right.
Beddoes concedes that trust is low in America, but she pushes back on the idea of universal hatred.
And if we dig into the Gallup polling numbers on this, they are both telling exactly half of the story.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Gallup shows that overall American trust in mass media is at a record low 28%. The ratings for honesty and ethics specifically sit right around 13 to 17%.
So that validates Musk's 15% claim.
It does.
But there is a massive partisan split hiding inside that average, isn't there?
A massive one. Democratic trust in the media is at 51%. Republican trust is at just 8%.
Wow.
So Musk is accurately describing the half of the country that actively despises institutional media, while Beddoes is looking at the half that still relies on it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, well, actually, you said earlier that it all hinges on a single revealing line Beddoes delivered during the interview.
Yes, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really does. She told Musk, "I'm not in the same arena as you."
She likely meant it as a humble statement of scale, right? Like acknowledging she is less famous.
Probably yes. But structurally, it is profoundly true. Her arena scores correctness, logic, and accountability. His arena scores traffic, emotional engagement, and reach.
But I have to ask you, if institutional media relies on accountability, but the public increasingly validates raw algorithmic influence, is the institutional model just doomed?
That is the existential question for journalism today. How do you fight back in a landscape driven by algorithms and high mistrust?
Right.
Beddoes is actually quite firm on her strategy, though. She heavily defends the decision to interview controversial figures like Musk. She even brings up her 2018 interview with Steve Bannon, which happened during what she calls a peak deplatforming moment.
Oh, I remember that. The New Yorker had invited Bannon to their festival, faced a massive staff and public backlash, and they ultimately rescinded his invitation.
They did.
But Beddoes kept him on the Economist stage despite similar pressure.
She kept him on stage because she argues that democracies die in echo chambers.
Yeah.
You cannot make progress or even really understand the world by only talking to people who already agree with your baseline assumptions.
You have to engage.
You have to engage, probe, and map out entirely different worldviews, even if you find them distasteful.
And The Economist itself is having to evolve to meet this new reality. I mean, for 180 years, they have operated as this collaborative hive mind where writers don't get individual bylines.
Right, it was all about the authoritative institutional voice over the individual ego.
Exactly. But now, Beddoes is actively pushing her journalists out from behind the curtain on podcasts, video series, and social media. Why the sudden shift?
Because she realizes that in the AI era, where synthetic content is everywhere and institutional trust is scarce, human connection is necessary.
That makes sense.
People don't just want the final conclusion anymore. They want to know how those opinions are reached and who is doing the analysis. Transparency has basically become the new currency of trust.
There's a massive irony here, though, regarding Musk's platform X. He frequently claims he doesn't need traditional editors or reporters anymore. He points to X's community notes feature as this ultimate crowdsourced truth engine, a replacement for legacy media.
But if you look at how community notes actually function, where do their citations come from? They rely entirely on encyclopedias, professional fact-checkers, scientific journals, and the very traditional news outlets that legacy journalism built. He is borrowing the structural credibility of the institutions he claims to be rendering obsolete.
So what does this all mean, especially for you listening at home when you see a statistic on your feed?
It brings us to Lao Fan's ultimate warning about the AI era. We have transitioned away from the old 20th century formula where everyone looked at the same data, agreed on the facts, and then debated the policy.
Right.
The new paradigm is terrifyingly efficient. We are no longer asking what is true. We are asking, What do I choose to believe?
It's like we shoot the arrow first, we paint the target around it wherever it lands, and then we let AI and algorithms fetch the perfectly curated, mathematically accurate data to applaud our perfect aim.
That's a perfect analogy.
The data won't make the choice for you anymore because there's enough accurate data in the world to support almost any worldview you want to adopt.
And that is the danger of having 240 million people all using the exact same epistemological ruler handed to them by one person's algorithm.
So the next time you find yourself armed with absolute, undisputed statistics in an argument, take a step back and ask yourself, who handed you the ruler and which end are you reading from?
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening. Follow us for daily insights into world affairs, and don't forget to like, comment, and share.